Well, good afternoon and welcome to this 1080 LinkedIn Live. My name is Alyson Ainsworth. I'm going to be hosting this session today. I'm delighted to be joined by my guests, Hughes, meditation teacher and mindset coach, and Matt Adamson. Now, I just need to make sure I get your title correct, Matt. Executive and career coach specializing in sustainable success, stress management and burnout. So hopefully I've done that justice. Both of whom I've asked to join me today, as they have particularly interesting personal stories about regarding the benefits of really having a work-life balance and why it's so important. So I'm sure everyone watching, listening will find this a really useful session. Please feel free to ask any questions as we go through. I will pick them up and present them to our speakers. And basically, by way of introduction, I will let them tell their stories and how they come to be working in this space today. So, Kate, can I come to you first? Why is work-life balance important? Why was it so important to you?
Thanks so much, Alyson. Thanks for having me on to speak today. Yeah, I learned firsthand the importance of a work-life balance. Probably a story that, people listening might have heard many times, but I was a lawyer. I was a managing partner at a very large regional firm, had a big team under me, and I worked really hard and I played really hard and I was having a great time because I absolutely loved my job. I really did love my job. And I started to get some physical symptoms now I know were the sort of warning signs of too much stress, not being able to reset, not having any balance at all, not understanding the need to recover. And I suffered a burnout in 2015, 2016. I eventually lost the sight in one of my eyes and I couldn't do my job properly and I couldn't live my life properly either. So then I was really at a very low ebb and a very low point. I just felt completely demoralized because I couldn't do the thing that I loved, which was work. Although, as it happened, I didn't really have that much time off work. And I was completely flabbergasted that this had happened to me. I think we all think we're invincible. I wasn't doing anything that everybody else wasn't doing. I was working hard and I was having a great time in the evenings and the weekends. And the kind of work I did, it was quite anti-social hours. And yeah, I really did find myself at a really low point. So I did switch career. I was advised by doctors to change my lifestyle. I ignored that advice to my detriment once, and I didn't ignore it the second time. So for me, striking that balance and being in touch with what is happening in the moment and understanding your own body and your own mind and your systems so that you can have the job you love and work to the degree that you want to work and have a great life is so important to me. I had no awareness. I had no skills previously. And my burnout was the evidence of that. So yeah, that's where I'm coming from when I talk about, the subjects that we're going to chat about today. And I'm very pleased to be out the other side of it. But I know there'll be a lot of people listening thinking, yeah, how am I feeling? How am I doing? Or maybe they've experienced burnout too.
So important, Kate. And I've seen the transition, having worked with you for a long period of time from where you were to where you are now. And it's phenomenal. So it can happen. Matt, do you want to tell us a bit about your story?
Yes, indeed. Very happy to. And thanks for having me on today. I guess reflecting on the question, why is it important? Because it's about protecting your own performance and the performance of your business. I spent best part of 9 years with UBS out in Asia Pacific. I was based in Hong Kong, but traveling around the region a lot. And I was within their HR function, handling a lot of their recruitment, running internal mobility for them, working with the bank's top talent, helping map out where they wanted to go, how they were going to get there, etc. And I went from being on the top talent program myself to exiting the business due to burnout within the space of 15 months. Now, I don't blame UBS for my burnout. However, being able to gain a work-life balance and stop necessarily operating purely in one way that how you become successful by working harder and longer than anybody else, well, to a point, and then perhaps it doesn't serve you so well anymore. And I only realized this when I actually experienced coaching for the first time. I lost 18 months of my career to burnout, and required a lot of therapy and medical help to sort of turn my life around from there. And it was only when I came out the other side that I had coaching, as I tried to work out what I wanted to do next, that I realized, blimey, if I'd have had some coaching previously, I may well never have burnt out at all, because I would have got so much more so much more in touch with what was important to me, and making sure that balance was there. And Kate, what's work-life balance for me is not necessarily work-life balance for you. We're doing things that we see other people doing, but it doesn't necessarily work for us, and we don't know the reality of those people. They may be burning out behind the scenes as well. We just don't know. So yeah, I recovered from my burnout, as I say, after about 18 months, retrained as a coach, and bringing my professional experience of mapping careers, managing careers, aligning it with my personal experience of the burnout to really try and help people be sustainably successful, achieve everything that they want, and be successful without burning out. So yeah, that's how and why I come to the table.
Oh, brilliant, Matt. Thank you for that, and thank you for sharing your personal heartfelt story. My next question is kind of just to help the people who are listening to understand the difference between what you know now that you didn't know then. So that question to Matt first. Do you want to start with that one?
Sure. Well, I guess really, aside from the realization about the power of coaching, and actually having some in the run-up might have been a good idea, might have prevented it in the first place. I think the biggest thing that I've learned, and my biggest takeaway in this whole process, is actually a deeply personal one. It's a notion that I am enough, because that's not something that I really was able to get a hold of. In fact, the very thing kind of driving and motivating my career for a long time was I didn't feel that I was enough. I wasn't good enough. And so when it came to key decisions around my career, it was never what's going to work best for me in this moment. It was very much, how am I going to get the most plaudits and thank yous to potentially suggest that I am good enough. It was all about receiving validation. And that was, for a long time, what was actually driving my career. So what I wish I'd known is that I was enough, and therefore would have taken probably different approaches and different decisions within my career. That means, again, I would probably still be in that career, because I would have found an equilibrium and a balance that would have worked much better for me.
Interesting. That whole good enough thing. We could do a whole session on that, really, couldn't we, guys? Yeah. And from your point of view, Kate, as a mindset coach, what would you tell yourself then that you now know?
I think it's interesting listening to Matt speaking, and I'm sure that the culture in Matt's profession would have been different to the culture, what I was in. I was very much, the messaging that I was getting was that I was more than good enough for the job that I was doing. I was about to be made an equity partner. This was all my dreams. This is everything I'd wanted. And I was a specialist in this field, and I was head of this, all of that. So what I didn't know then was that I had the skills and the resilience to be able to pivot and change careers, I did not have the faith in myself that the skills that I had from being a lawyer could be transferred into running my own business. I you know, that was just a leap too far. And again, a similarity perhaps this time with Matt, I only really appreciated that when I had a coach. And you know, that process was so valuable to me. And you know, Alyson, I know you say, oh, I credit you with too much, but really the coaching that I had with you about career and transition and career change was absolutely vital, because the messaging I was given, you know, maybe it was subliminal, was that this is where you're meant to be. This is what you're good at, you know, stay in your own lane in law. And it was absolutely no good for me, my mental health, my physical health, my morale, my outlook. And so, yeah, I would love to go back and say, Kate, you don't need to be here. You can thrive in any set of circumstances that you find yourself in. You're resourceful, you're creative, you're a whole human being. You know, if someone cut you in half, it would not have the name of the firm, you know, written in your tummy. So that's what I've learned. And, you know, now when I'm coaching others, really believing and reminding myself and being in touch with the fact that I will be sitting in front of somebody who is also resilient, resourceful, creative. We all are, but we perhaps lose sight of that.
Yeah, I think we do. And I think both of your examples are classic in that working hard and just being absorbed in the day-to-day and the weeks rushing by and never taking the time to stop and think, you know, that whole pause to what is actually going on, and am I enjoying this, and am I, you know, is this really where I want to be? And I certainly know with the coaching that I had when I changed careers, it was very similar. It was that whole, are my values aligned, and is my skill set aligned, and where's my meaning and purpose gone in all of this? You know, some really fairly deep questions to ask yourself. But once you come out the other side of something, it makes such a difference, I think. So sharing that. Matt, we also talked about boundaries and boundary setting around that whole good piece. Did you want to share anything on that?
Well, indeed. I mean, boundaries are so important. You know, there's a lot of messaging that we receive of, you know, as I said earlier, working harder, working longer is therefore more productive. And therefore, you know, if you chain yourself to your desk, you're going to deliver more, and therefore we're going to see better results. Well, actually, that isn't really true. You know, there's a lot of data out there which suggests an optimal working week is actually something in the region of 40 hours a week. And you can actually do, you know, a week or two of working 60, 70-hour weeks, and you will be more productive. You will actually achieve more by the fact that you're working longer. However, the cumulative sort of nature of the fatigue you start to experience and the stress that you're experiencing, putting your body through those kind of working hours, actually accumulate up. And by the time you reach 3 weeks, as little as that, of trying to do those sorts of hours, your productivity is actually then lower. Your net productivity has fallen below the baseline you would have achieved with a 40-hour week. So there's all of this messaging going on, and you know, you see people in the office who are, you know, there to be seen, and you feel you have to be there as well, and all of this sort of stuff. But actually, a key way of protecting your own productivity is to put those boundaries in. It's very hard to do. You know, I was successful in my career for a long time because I was always available. I was always on. But, you know, we see where that led me. And we see that my employer lost a key talent because of it. And actually, you know, I would quite likely still be there now, delivering great work, had I put those boundaries in place. So it's very difficult to do, but it's actually essential for your own well-being, but also your own productivity. So I think they're super important.
I agree. boundaries comes up so many times in coaching sessions. I'm sure it does with you as well, Kate.
Yeah, and Matt, I just listening to you there, you know, gosh, if we'd only had the courage to use that word, you know, as a sentence in itself, no, or no, thank you. You know, it just feels like, oh, you know, I can't do that. That's not what that's not what I'm known for. You know, I'm sure it's the same for you. I'll ask Kate because she'll say yes, and everyone knows, ask a busy person if you want something done. And so, yeah, having those personal boundaries, I think, is crucial. And you know, boundaries in respect of your own well-being as well as work. So, you know, I have boundaries for just my own health and well-being to make sure that I'm getting the care that I need for myself. You know, lots has been written about, you know, tech in the bedroom or screens before bed or, you know, getting outside in the morning or, you know, all these things we know. My boundaries for me now are about those things, way more than how much I'm working. Although I do have boundaries for that too. I think they're not quite so hard and fast as the ones for looking after myself.
No, it's so important. A couple of questions come into the chat. Liz has asked this question. This is very similar to the question we are going to head into, Liz. So thank you for asking that. But I'll come back to the other question in a minute. But yeah, as a starting point for a healthy career strategy, what do you need and what does success look like? So I think this covers what Liz is asking. So what were sort of pointers? And Matt, when we were chatting earlier about separating the human from the career, there was an interesting take on that as well. So do you want to start with this question?
Yeah. Yeah, to all intents and purposes, I really don't think you can separate the person from their career. It's therefore really, really important to understand what success looks like for you as an individual. There's very strong societal definitions of success, which talk about, you know, tangible things, houses, cars, corporate titles, salary, all of these sorts of things. And look, I'm not going to be overly simplistic about it. Financial reward is very important. But there's so much more to success than just the financial reward. So, you know, if you're earning all that money, but because of that, your health is suffering, because of that, your relationships are suffering, and, you know, you don't necessarily have time to do things with the people that you love, and therefore that's suffering, you know, what then really is success? So, actually understanding on a very human level what success truly looks like for you as an individual, and then using that as a starting point to say, right, well, how in my career, how do I shape my career to ensure that those elements are in place, is one of the very best ways to ensure sustainable success. You know, you got that very clear notion of what you're driving for, both within work but outside of work as well, and that in itself can give you the resilience. I mean, there's a very famous quote from Nietzsche, which something along the lines of, those who have a clear why can tolerate almost any how. You know, if you really got that close knowledge of why it is that you're doing these things, it can help you power through. On the flip side of that, however, I would caution, I work with small business owners quite a lot, who, because it's their name over the door and there's so much attachment to the business and the purpose that they have in working for their own business, that again, they erode all of those boundaries and they forget about these other metrics of success. For example, they tell themselves that they're doing this for, you know, setting their family up. Well, okay, but how's your family doing right now in this moment? Well, not very well. My daughter's off to uni and I don't know her because I've not spent time with her because I've been focused on the business. It's like, well, okay, are you really hitting your success metrics then? You know, are you really setting yourself up in the right way? So, yeah, I sort of rambled a little bit there, but it's about really knowing what success looks like for you as a human that can help you then plot that career path and actually give you tools and resilience to actually help you push on and push forwards whilst being very conscious of the other stuff outside that as well.
Yeah, very, very powerful questions though. You know, what do you need? It's one of my favorite coaching questions. What do you need right now? You know, when did somebody last ask you what you need? Because I'm sure all of us could do with sitting down with somebody and saying, actually, you know, right now I just need somebody to listen to me, or I need some advice, or I need a cup of tea. But yeah, powerful questions. Kate, what's your take on those questions?
I agree that you can't separate the human from the career. You know, life isn't something that happens outside work. This is it. This is it, folks. Right now. And if that's the moment you're at work, then that is your life. And I think getting to know yourself and understanding your needs is absolutely crucial. And it may be that you're in a job that you do absolutely love. And, you know, you just want to maybe put in some boundaries or connect with, you know, like Matt was talking about, you know, your success metrics. What do I need here? But it may be that you're in a job that doesn't suit you, but because you do well in it, you haven't really thought about what your alternatives are. And that's where, you know, you guys as career coaches really come into your own. And I think a conversation with somebody about, you know, what do you need from your job can be really important, because we spend a lot of our lives at work. So let's make those moments something we're enjoying. Maybe it's not possible for you to switch roles right now, in which case it's the attitude you're bringing to that role that will see you through the week and, you know, not dreading Monday morning. For me personally, the idea of identifying our needs and identifying what success is about getting to know ourselves. And that's why I coach in conjunction with meditation and mindfulness. So really meeting yourself where you're at and knowing where you are at, knowing yourself, making friends with yourself, coming to really understand the fabric of who you are, answers a lot of the questions about, well, what does success look like and what do I need right now? And certainly for me, success is more of a feeling than anything I could really sort of X, Y, Z tick off a list. Okay, you know, we've all got to pay the bills. We all, you know, want to see different parts of the world. But for me, success in the moment is a feeling of well-being, calm, happiness. And if I've got that in the moment, that's a success. But I think a lot of us are quite scattered. We're not maybe able to connect with ourselves on that level. So that's why I work in the way that I do.
Really powerful stuff, Kate. I think a couple of other questions come in. Liz has talked about, in terms of balance, how can you make balance achievable as a leader? And another question here from Brendan, very similar, and I think we're going to go on and do sort of top tips. But what has made the biggest difference for you both in managing balance? So in terms of those tips, Kate, do you want to start on that one? What would you say in terms of managing balance? I think you've given some great advice already.
For me, it's about putting my experience as a human being above everything else and my well-being first. Because I know if that side's off kilter, there's no chance of there being any balance anyway. So, you know, it's about setting aside the times that I need to meet my needs, and that we're all different. You know, what makes my heart sing won't be the same for the person sitting next to me. But if I don't do those things regularly, I'm not the version of Kate that I want to be putting out there in the world. So you have to, I think, really take that side of it seriously. I think, and maybe this is going back a little bit to Liz's question, but the messaging that can come from an employer is, you know, very much work is number one. you're really good at your job, keep doing it. And there's maybe the discussion isn't going on about, well, what's happening when you're not actually working. So for me, I guess one of my top tips is to get to know yourself. If you've never ventured into meditation and mindfulness, take the plunge, get to know yourself, get to really understand what it is that you need, that you want, that's really going to nurture you. Because once you've sussed that part out, the balance is far more likely to come naturally with work.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's an expression that you often use and remind us of when I'm working with you in meditation is making an appointment with yourself, which sounds like a really obvious thing to do, and also a bit of a strange thing to do. But I do have a Post-it note on my wall that says appointment with myself, because if you don't stop and have some of those pause moments, then it can start to feel very overwhelming. And Matt, in terms of Brendan's question there, what do you think has made the biggest difference for you in managing balance?
For me, it's actually a very similar thing, actually. I always espouse the notion of a happiness list. It sounds trite, but it's really helped me. And it's about getting in touch with yourself, again, as Kate was saying. And so I encourage people to write out a list of things that spark joy, that make them happy, that, give them that warm feeling, and then scheduling time to make sure you do those things, because it's so easy to let life pass by in a blur of work and admin and family and all these sort of things, that if you're not really intentional to do these things, they just don't happen. And again, it's about building your resilience levels. These things, by doing those things, it's proven that you will increase your resilience, because I guess it's fairly self-evident. You're making time for the things that make you happy. And it's being about very intentional in doing that. And I always encourage my clients to look at that, which sounds odd because it's almost nothing to do with work, but you manage your work diary. You need to be so conscious of managing your personal diary too. And getting from that what you need. So yeah, that's always my top tip. And then in terms of within leadership, I think there was a couple of things again that I learned through coaching. I always considered myself a great leader. I thought I was considerate and kind and engaging and this sort of stuff. But when it came to big things, I would always I would always talk, I would say, this is what we're doing and this is why we're doing it. And I wouldn't give the space for my team to actually explore that for themselves, what they can bring to that, what that will mean for them, and actually shutting up, for one of the better phrase. And I really learned that through coaching as well, and saw how much of a better leader that I could be. But also, I guess, really just being very transparent yourself. And maybe for you as a leader, working 6, 7, 8, 9 o'clock in the evening is what works for you. That's fine. But you need to be very careful that if you are sending out emails at that sort of time, that you're not creating the expectation that you need any response, and that you're being very clear with people. I'm not online at 7 in the morning because I am online at 7 at night, and that's what works for me. What works for you? Find out, explore, be curious with your team members.
It's a key point about not creating that expectation that's the norm, though, isn't it? Like you say, as long as the balance is there, that you are doing other things that mean that you're not extending your day from 7 till 7, dependent on where you are in the world as well. I know it's hard sometimes. I get that. Excellent. Just want to finish with kind of top tips, and I know we've probably covered top tips in everything we've said, but if there's anything else that you want to share in terms of top tips to leave our listeners with. I love what you said, Matt, about creating joy. Joy is one of my favorite words, and I have a mantra that if it doesn't give me joy, I'm not doing it. So that's my top tip. But what about you guys?
Well, I'd say from my side, I would point to airlines. They give us the advice every time we get on board them. which is put your own oxygen mask on first. You know, I'm driven by being a people pleaser and wanting people to have a good experience. But I now know that I'm not going to be in a good position to be able to help people if I'm not in a good position myself. So put your own oxygen mask on first.
Kate?
Yeah, nice. Well, just really picking up from what Matt said earlier about intention, and I'd say set your intention. You know, be really clear on what you want. Set that intention. And that might be, I want to have a conversation with a career coach, or it might be, I want to make the appointment with myself, or it might be, I want to do my happiness list and I want to get to know my daughter before she goes to university. Whatever it is, set your intention, know your why. It's so powerful. And I think having it top of mind, Alyson, you mentioned having a sort of post-it note on the wall behind you, whatever, have it somewhere where you can see it and see what flows.
Brilliant, guys. Well, we're out of time. I always say these half hours go very quickly. So it just leaves me to say thank you so much for your time today. I hope everybody watching and listening have found this helpful. Just to say that the next session is in November and will be hosted by my dear colleague Mr. Jamson and Trevor Meridian on a very long title: Redundancy, Resilience, Relevance and Resourcefulness. I knew I'd trip over one of those words. In your career moving forward when the worst happens. I'm not quite sure what they mean by the worst happens, but I'll let them tell that story themselves on the 11th of November. So thank you again to my guests, to Matt, to Kate, for your time today.
Thanks, Alyson.
Thank you.
Thank you.